Hello and welcome to Quiz Class. I'm your host Ellen, and today we have 100 questions on general knowledge. Let's take a look at our Quiz Class awards. Make sure to tell us how you rank in the comments at the end, along with the answer to the bonus question. So let's begin. Who played the washed-up boxer Terry Malloy in On the Waterfront? Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, or Burt Lancaster? Marlon Brando. What 1969 film won Best Picture and featured a con-man duo during the Great Depression? Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, or Paper Moon? Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. What painter's Water Lily series was inspired by his garden in Giverny, France? Edgar Degas, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, or Claude Monet? Claude Monet. What 1975 film about mental institutions won 5 major Academy Awards? Awakenings, The Shining, or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Which 1960s pop song famously featured a harpsichord and the lyric, "And Here's to You"? California Dreamin', Eleanor Rigby, or Mrs. Robinson? Mrs. Robinson. What 1973 crime film is based on real-life con artists and features ragtime music? Serpico, The Sting, or The French Connection? The Sting. What 1968 musical featured Julie Andrews twirling in the Austrian Alps? The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, or Mary Poppins? The Sound of Music. What 1959 epic featured a chariot race scene that revolutionized film editing? Spartacus, Ben-Hur, or Cleopatra? Ben-Hur. What U.S. president's daughter was nicknamed Princess Alice? Woodrow Wilson's, Calvin Coolidge's, or Theodore Roosevelt's? Theodore Roosevelt's. What was the first American car to feature power steering? The Cadillac Fleetwood, the Chrysler Imperial, or the Buick Roadmaster? The Chrysler Imperial. In Midnight Cowboy, what line does Ratso Rizzo famously shout? Forget about it, Hey, I'm talking to you, or I'm walking here? I'm walking here. Which president's assassination in 1881 led to major civil service reform? Chester A. Arthur, William McKinley, or James Garfield? James Garfield. What song by the Beatles was inspired by a circus poster? Come Together, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, or Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite? Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. What U.S. landmark was completed in 1941 but not dedicated until 1943 due to World War II? Mount Rushmore, the Hoover Dam, or the Pentagon? Mount Rushmore. Who played George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life? Henry Fonda, Cary Grant, or James Stewart? James Stewart. What 1951 movie featured the line Stella, shouted in anguish? Close Encounters of the Third Kind, A Streetcar Named Desire, or East of Eden? A Streetcar Named Desire. What song did Louis Armstrong make famous with his gravelly voice, in 1967? What a Wonderful World, Hello Dolly, or Blueberry Hill? What a Wonderful World. What 1969 film won Best Picture and starred Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight? All the President's Men, Marathon Man, or Midnight Cowboy? Midnight Cowboy. What painting by Edvard Munch depicts a figure screaming under a blood-red sky? The Scream, The Cry, or Despair? The Scream. We have reached question 20. What 1964 film features the line, "A martini, shaken, not stirred"? Dr. No, Goldfinger, or Thunderball? Goldfinger. Who became the first African-American woman to win a Grammy for Best New Artist? Lauryn Hill, Whitney Houston, or Alicia Keys? Lauryn Hill. What musician's 1969 album, Tommy, is considered a rock opera masterpiece? Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, or the Who? The Who. What political figure survived an assassination attempt in 1981? Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, or Gerald Ford? Ronald Reagan. Which car was nicknamed the Italian Stallion in racing and design circles? Lamborghini Miura, the Ferrari 250 GTO, or the Maserati Ghibli? The Ferrari 250 GTO. What 1971 film stars Gene Hackman as a news editor exposing corruption? All the President's Men, The Conversation, or The French Connection? The French Connection. What 1974 film includes a memorable line, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning"? Platoon, Apocalypse Now, or The Deer Hunter? Apocalypse Now. What 1960s film features Dustin Hoffman as a naive student in New York City? The Graduate, The Producers, or Midnight Cowboy? The Graduate. What 1977 film features a demonic entity that uses a young girl as a host? Halloween, The Exorcist, or Carrie? The Exorcist. What 1964 film features Sidney Poitier breaking racial barriers as a police officer? A Patch of Blue, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, or In the Heat of the Night? In the Heat of the Night. Which iconic singer recorded At Last in 1960? Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin, or Etta James? And the answer is Etta James. We are on question 31. What 1963 film tells the story of an ambitious writer in Rome? Cleopatra, La Dolce Vita, or Eight and a Half? La Dolce Vita. What 1960 film features Marlon Brando in a rebellious teen drama? Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, or The Wild One? Rebel Without a Cause. What 1973 film stars Robert Redford and Paul Newman as conmen? Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, or Dog Day Afternoon? The Sting. What 1971 horror film depicts a couple terrorized in the desert by a deranged hitchhiker? Duel, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or The Last House on the Left? Duel. Which ancient ruler is said to have waged a war of silence, forbidding speaking for days? King Ashoka, Julius Caesar, or Ramses II? King Ashoka. In 1835, a newspaper reported that visitors could fly to the moon. This caused a local panic in which city? London, Paris, or New York? New York. Which British Prime Minister survived 7 assassination attempts during World War II? Neville Chamberlain, Winston Churchill, or Clement Attlee? And the answer is Winston Churchill. Moving on to question 38. What 1972 film depicts 2 conmen tricking the mafia during the Great Depression? The Sting, Paper Moon, or Bonnie and Clyde? And The Sting again is the answer. Which European country once had a tax on beards? Spain, France, or Russia? And that is Russia. We are on question 40. What 1964 film features Sidney Poitier breaking racial barriers as a police officer? This is a freebie for you. A Patch of Blue, In the Heat of the Night, or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? In the Heat of the Night. Question 41. Who recorded the first ever music video aired on MTV in 1981? Madonna, The Bugles, or Michael Jackson? The Bugles. Which river flows backward for a short distance during monsoons due to tidal effects? Mississippi, the Amazon, or the Holy? The Holy. Which U.S. president signed the Alaska Purchase into law in 1867? Andrew Johnson, Abraham Lincoln, or Ulysses S. Grant? Andrew Johnson. The famous Surrealist exhibition of 1938 featured a living sculpture by which artist? Salvador Dali, René Magritte, or Man Ray? Man Ray. Which car was nicknamed Le Monstre after being modified for the 1966 Le Mans race? The Ferrari 330, the Ford GT40, or the Porsche 906? The Ford GT40. What famous Broadway musical first featured a racially integrated cast in 1943? Oklahoma, Carmen Jones, or Cabin in the Sky? Carmen Jones. Which ocean liner's maiden voyage in 1936 set a transatlantic speed record? The SS Normandy, the Queen Mary, or the RMS Titanic? The SS Normandy. What movie features a giant mirror maze and a thrilling chase through it? Labyrinth, Vertigo, or The Shining? Labyrinth. The 1930s toy called a mousetrap combined which two popular play elements? Puzzles and marbles, mechanical action and dice, or building blocks and pegs? Mechanical action and dice. We have reached question 50. Please tell us how you're doing so far in the comments. Who became the first woman to appear on a U.S. currency note in 1896? Susan B. Anthony, Martha Washington, or Pocahontas? Susan B. Anthony. What famous historical duel took place in Weehawken, New Jersey in 1804? Andrew Jackson versus Charles Dickinson, Alexander Hamilton versus Aaron Burr, or James Bowie versus Sam Houston? Alexander Hamilton versus Aaron Burr. Which novel was the first to sell over 1 million copies in the US before 1920? The Call of the Wild, The Jungle, or The Wizard of Oz? The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Which classic car featured a dashboard shaped like a flying wing in the 1950s? The Cadillac Eldorado, Chrysler Imperial, or the Buick Roadmaster? The Chrysler Imperial. What 1964 film features a suspenseful game of cat and mouse between two spies in Venice? The Venetian Affair, Goldfinger, or From Russia with Love? The Venetian Affair. Which historic fortress is nicknamed the Gibraltar of the East due to its strategic location? Castillo de San Marcos, Fort Sumter, or Fort Zeelandia? Fort Zeelandia. Which famous car race allowed prototypes to exceed 200 miles per hour in the 1930s? The Indianapolis 500, The Le Mans 24 Hours or Monaco Grand Prix? Le Mans 24 Hours. Which rare musical instrument uses glass bowls filled with water to produce sound? The glass harmonica, the celesta, or the guitar? The glass harmonica. Which 1950s Hollywood musical features a scene shot on roller skates in a bowling alley? Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Singin' in the Rain, or Roller Derby Queen? Roller Derby Queen. Which obscure political figure served only 32 days as a U.S. Senator in 1919? Hiram Johnson, William Borah, or Victor Berger? Victor Berger. And moving on to question 60. Let's take a breather right here. Make sure to tell us how you're doing so far in the comments. Which European country was the first to adopt the metric system in 1795? Switzerland, France, or Belgium? And the answer is France. The Chrysler Airflow, introduced in 1934, was revolutionary for what reason? Bulletproof windshield, the first hybrid engine, or the aerodynamic design? The aerodynamic design. Which U.S. state has more lighthouses than any other? Florida, Michigan, or Maine? Michigan. Who choreographed the original West Side Story dance sequences? Jerome Robbins, Bob Fosse, or Jerome Robbins? Jerome Robbins or Bob Fosse? Jerome Robbins is the answer. Question 64. What unusual 1950s fad involved painting your hair with glow-in-the-dark paint? Rainbow highlights, black light braids, or neon hair craze? Neon hair craze. Which iconic 1930s skyscraper was once the tallest building in the world? The Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building, or the Chrysler Building? The Empire State Building. In The Sound of Music, what song do the Von Trapp children sing at the festival? My Favorite Things, Edelweiss, or So Long, Farewell? So Long, Farewell. What 1955 film starred James Dean in his final role? Giant, Rebel Without a Cause, or East of Eden? Giant. What iconic car was dubbed the Little Deuce Coupe? 1955 Buick, the 1932 Ford, or the 1940 Chevrolet? The 1932 Ford. What was the first televised event broadcast live around the world in 1969? The Apollo 11 moon landing, the Woodstock Festival, or Nixon's inauguration? The Apollo 11 moon landing. We are at question 70. What was the real name of the artist known as Bob Dylan? David Jones, Richard Starkey, or Robert Zimmerman? And lock in your answer, Robert Zimmerman. Moving along, what 1958 movie featured Paul Newman as a pool savant named Fast Eddie Felson? The Hustler, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, or Cool Hand Luke? The Hustler. What future U.S. president appeared as himself in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York? Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, or Ronald Reagan? Donald Trump. Which U.S. First Lady redecorated the White House and hosted a televised tour in 1962? Jacqueline Kennedy, Eleanor Roosevelt, or Nancy Reagan? Jacqueline Kennedy. What 1941 film is often considered the greatest ever made, famous for the line Rosebud? The Maltese Falcon, Casablanca, or Citizen Kane? Citizen Kane. Who played Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951? Vivian Leigh, Bette Davis, or Audrey Hepburn? Vivian Leigh. What iconic song begins with the line, "There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold"? Hotel California, Bohemian Rhapsody, or Stairway to Heaven? Stairway to Heaven. What 1968 musical film starred Barbra Streisand as Fanny Brice? Hello, Dolly, Funny Girl, or My Fair Lady? Funny Girl. What was the first foreign car brand to open a factory in the US? Volkswagen, Toyota, or Honda? And the answer is Volkswagen. What 1954 monster movie launched a decades-long franchise from Japan? Mothra Attacks, King Kong vs. the World, or Godzilla? Godzilla. What 1963 film featured Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra in one of Hollywood's most expensive productions? Antony and Cleopatra, Cleopatra, or The Egyptian? Cleopatra. What 1970s American rock band was named after a gym teacher? Leonard Skinner, Creedence Clearwater Revival, or Fleetwood Mac? Leonard Skinner. What 1950s TV show ended with the line, "Good night, John Boy"? Bonanza, The Waltons, or Father Knows Best? The Waltons. What 1953 film starred Audrey Hepburn as a runaway princess in Rome? Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, or Sabrina? Roman Holiday. What actor played Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind in 1939? Gary Cooper, Cary Grant, or Clark Gable? Clark Gable. What 1955 movie featured the line, "You're tearing me apart"? Rebel Without a Cause, Giant, or East of Eden? Rebel Without a Cause. What classic car introduced the first seatbelt warning light? The Volvo 240, the Ford Pinto, or the Buick Riviera? The Buick Riviera. Who was known as the chairman of the board? Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, or Frank Sinatra? Frank Sinatra. What famous photographer created the migrant mother image during the Great Depression? Margaret Bourke-White, Dorothea Lange, or Annie Leibovitz? Dorothea Lange. What 1961 car was marketed as America's only four-door convertible? The Chrysler Imperial, Cadillac Eldorado, or the Lincoln Continental? The Lincoln Continental. Who was the first African American woman elected to Congress? Maxine Waters, Barbara Jordan, or Shirley Chisholm? Shirley Chisholm. What actress starred opposite Humphrey Bogart in The African Queen in 1951? Lauren Bacall, Katharine Hepburn, or Ingrid Bergman? Katharine Hepburn. What 1956 film featured Yul Brynner as the King of Siam? South Pacific, Anna and the King, or The King and I? The King and I. What U.S. president established NASA in 1958? Harry Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, or John F. Kennedy? Dwight Eisenhower. Who was the first U.S. president to resign from office? Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, or Richard Nixon? And the answer is Richard Nixon. Who starred as Maria in West Side Story in 1961? Natalie Wood, Julie Andrews, or Rita Moreno? Natalie Wood. What famous architect designed the Guggenheim Museum in New York? Eero Saarinen, I.M. Pei, or Frank Lloyd Wright? Frank Lloyd Wright. What 1973 film introduced the villain Hannibal Lecter? The Exorcist, The Silence of the Lambs, or Manhunter? Manhunter. What 1951 sci-fi film warned of alien invasion and Atomic Fear, Forbidden Planet, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or The Day the Earth Stood Still? The Day the Earth Stood Still. Who performed the 1969 hit Suspicious Minds? Buddy Holly, Roy Orbison, or Elvis Presley? Elvis Presley. And we are on question 100. What 1967 film featured the line, "Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me"? Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, or Cool Hand Luke? The answer is The Graduate. And for our bonus question, what was the first car model produced by Porsche? Let us know the answer in the comments and, of course, how well you did with our Quiz Class Einstein rewards. Thanks for playing, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.